trying to go out there if you need to contact someone that's in the area, especially at a school or a business, to do so via the telephone or social media, so not to complicate the already chaotic and active area.
Right. The Harford County Sheriff's Department is saying that the situation is still very fluid. It's unclear right now. We don't have any information about the suspect or where that suspect may be. They're asking that people avoid that area. You can see this shot from Chopper 13, and we are being told that they're only allowed to get so close because of that area. They need to keep the skies clear as they continue to investigate, and that's so that the police choppers can get where they need to go as well.
And they need to be able to do that because they're still trying to get as much information as possible and trying to make sure that the people that are hurt, the victims in this case, are in the hospital, can make it to the hospital. Again, live look for you from Chopper 13 over the scene right now.
Yeah, and as Rick mentioned earlier, and Mike, you know, this is just not too far from you know, the last scene that we covered. As Rick mentioned, it was just a year ago when there were 3 workers who were killed at an Edgewood facility. And then Rick, just kind of refresh it for us. Roddy Prince then went up 95, and there was another shooting in Delaware. And so that's a concern, of course, where this suspect may be in today's incident.
And Jess, I'm glad you brought that up because I just spoke with authorities literally 1 minute ago, and they tell us the suspect has not been taken into custody yet. So still an active search for this suspect. They say it's not an active shooting situation anymore, but that the suspect has not been taken into custody yet. And that's certainly a concern. Where did this suspect flee to? Where's he at? Is there anybody else that is involved with this? But as far as the media staging area goes, which is where we're at right now, Old Philadelphia Road and Short Lane Road, it's very quiet over here, but about 20 minutes ago it wasn't. We saw an ambulance from Having a Grace race by where we were. I actually tweeted that out a little while ago. Also riding up here from the Baltimore area along 95, we saw several unmarked police cars with their sirens and lights speeding up here to Harford County, trying to get to the scene. And then Spissucia Road, which is currently blocked off, and Chopper 13 was over that area, or still is over that area right now, which is where the shooting took place. We saw several unmarked police cars trying to get into that area as well, obviously trying to do what they can to help with this investigation. But you bring up the 2 previous shootings that we had here. Of course, the one in Bel Air a couple years ago at Panera Bread with the deputies from Harford County. Then the one literally almost a year ago that took place at Advanced Granite Solutions, that horrific workplace shooting. And you had mentioned when you ride up here and you get here, and even for me just to be sitting here right now, it's hard not to think about those shootings and hard to believe that here we are again, literally less than a year later, and a possible another workplace shooting, which is what the report initially came out as. We know multiple people shot, and we are expected to get an update here around 11:45 with more information on this tragedy. But again, authorities just told me a short time ago that suspect has not been taken into custody yet. Jess, Nicole?
Rick, stand by for just a minute. We just want to update any parents who are concerned. Church Creek Elementary School has been placed on a modified lockdown. Fortunately, as we mentioned, this is an industrial or business park. There isn't a school in the immediate vicinity, but they are doing that at Church Creek Elementary out of an abundance of caution, because that would probably be the closest one in proximity to where this shooting occurred. And Rick, as you mentioned, that suspect has not been caught, so they don't know exactly where he or she may be at this point. What are you hearing about the possible media briefing? Are they still, I imagine, gathering information on the suspect and the victims as well?
Jess, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear if you were talking to me right there. We're trying to fix the battery on the DeGero. But yes, we know the immediate briefing, 11:45, and I heard from authorities literally just minutes ago, and they said this suspect has not been taken into custody yet. But wanted to point out, this is not still an active shooter situation. The shooting has ended, but the search for the suspect, for the alleged shooter, continues. And of course, in a situation like this, you have to wonder, is this, you know, one individual acting like this? Was there multiple people involved? That information we don't know yet, but we are expected to get an update here in less than an hour, and hopefully iron out some of these details. But as far as this area goes, specifically the media staging area is pretty quiet right now, but still a little while ago we saw one ambulance race by the scene. And just coming up here from the Baltimore area, we keep reiterating the massive amounts of unmarked police cars that were literally racing up 95 with their sirens and lights trying to get to this scene. There's a couple of homes by here in terms of some neighborhoods that are nearby. Obviously a lot of people that are starting to circulate out and trying to figure out what's going on. Of course, they're worried, and as you mentioned, whether they have children or not, whether those kids are in school right now. So a lot of concern in this area, but still a lot of details that have not yet been released.
All right, Rick, thank you so much, and we'll keep coming back to you in the next few minutes ahead of that media briefing. Kimberly Eaton is on the way, and also Governor Larry Hogan just sent out another tweet. You know, it's interesting when we're covering the stories, we're getting so much information
at
via
one time.
Social media.
Yes. So he just tweeted out that MDSP is on the scene assisting the Harford Sheriff's Department, and of course, still standing by ready to offer any additional support. As we've been telling you, the ATF was on the scene, FBI as well, to help the Sheriff's Office. And the key piece of information that this is someone who lives in Aberdeen who had a similar shooting, again, that you've been mentioning, Jess and Rick, 2 years ago. They say it's quite odd that they both happened so close and so close to the Aberdeen proving grounds.
Right.
And I think the key piece of information that Rick just gave us was that they're still looking for the suspect.
Right, and we just don't know at this point.
They don't know.
We had some concerns about area schools, but again, fortunately, because this is a business park, the schools are not very close to the location. But if you are just tuning in, Church Creek Elementary School is on a modified lockdown. There's no threat to the school at this point, but that is out of an abundance of precaution. And again, if you do have children there, Church Creek Elementary School, as Sharon mentioned, sometimes it's almost safer to have them there because we don't know where the suspect is. Police are rerouting people around that area. Several roads are closed. And again, we are waiting for that 11:45 media briefing so that we know exactly where this took place.
Absolutely. And the witness that Mike Halgren spoke with was saying the same thing. There's only 3 ways in and out in that area, so everything is jammed tight with emergency crews trying to get to the scene, trying to get people out of there to the hospital. So that area, again, the traffic is tight, things are moving quickly, and they're asking people to avoid the area. If you're just joining us, this is south of Aberdeen, Pastucia Road, Perryman Road, a shooting in the area. Multiple people have been shot, as Mike told us earlier. People are at shock trauma, and in Delaware at the hospital as well.
Harford County Fire and EMS is tweeting out right now that they are working a shooting incident at the Rite Aid Distribution Center in Aberdeen. We are working to confirm that, but that is per the fire department in Harford County EMS. We know that this is in the business district, but we are still waiting to confirm it exactly which business, but that is per the fire department. Okay, and what you're looking at is people being evacuated on buses.
That's right. We don't know where they're going. We do know they're getting on those buses to get out of the area. Again, we were told this area has been very tight since the calls came in. Of course, trying to get the emergency vehicles in and out. So that's what you're looking at right now. We want to check back in with Rick. He is on the scene right now. Rick, can you tell us what you're seeing?
Okay, we're having trouble. We are confirming that multiple people, well, they're saying multiple people who have been shot. It's unclear if they are fatal. Congressman Dutch Ruppersberger tweeting out that he's monitoring the shooting in Aberdeen, asking folks to avoid the area and praying for victims and their loved ones. Rick, you had mentioned a short time ago that police are saying that no more shots are being fired, but they are still looking for a suspect. And also, I'm wondering if you got that update as well from Harford County Fire.
Yep, that's Jess and Nicole. That's exactly what I'm looking at right now. The Harford County Fire and EMS tweeting out literally moments ago that this shooting took place at the Rite Aid Distribution Center. So we now know that multiple people have been shot at the Rite Aid Distribution Center. And I want to go to Chopper 13 because they're over that scene right now. What looks like employees being evacuated out of that warehouse and being put on the school buses. Now, again, this is new information. We were just told moments ago by Harford County Fire and EMS, who tweeted out that this incident took place at the Rite Aid Distribution Center, and that's where multiple people were shot. The media staging area, that's exactly where we are right now at Old Philadelphia Road and Short Lane Road. We're expected to get an update here now in about 35 minutes to get some more information on this shooting. But the new information, the biggest detail that just unfolded here moments ago, this shooting took place at the Rite Aid Distribution Center, the warehouse in Chopper 13 over that scene where multiple people are being evacuated. We know multiple people shot. We saw an ambulance race by where we are literally about 15 to 20 minutes ago, and authorities tell us they are still searching for the suspect at this hour. They say no arrests have been made and that suspect is not yet in custody. So we're going to get a whole lot more information when this media availability takes place in literally less than 35 minutes now. We'll start to piece together this horrific situation.
All right, Rick, and I'm just pulled up their Facebook page, the Rite Aid distribution page, and I'm looking at comments from employees. There are several people taking to their Facebook page and saying that either they are inside or nearby. It's still unclear at this point. We did see those buses taking people out. And something else that I just read, they said as many as 1,000 people work at that distribution center. So we're trying to get more information about that as well. We know that the victims were taken to Delaware as well as here in Maryland. Let's go back to Mike Halgren.
Yes, he's on the scene for us. Mike, can you update us so far what you're seeing?
Yes. So we moved a little bit closer. Been talking about that Rite Aid distribution center. Here it is. I'm just across the street here. You can see the massive police presence. I've seen FBI, ATF, people in military uniforms. I see some ATF people with ATF vests just behind me here. Just a massive police presence. This is where Spasucia Road ends, right at this distribution center. There's a cemetery across the street here. You can see the roads are blocked off. We're looking at video from Chopper 13. An active scene. We mentioned how those school buses were helping to evacuate people. Those school buses came in here on Spasucia Road when we were live just a few minutes ago. They were empty, brought them up here to the scene, to the Rite Aid distribution center. We're trying to evacuate people from the scene. We also saw a Honda that was at this corner, and it had crime tape around it, and police towed that away probably within the past 10 minutes. We don't know if that vehicle was connected to the scene. Now, just a few moments ago, we talked to a woman who lives and works in this area about what it has been like, what she is seeing. Here she is.
It's very scary when it's just right there on your doorstep, because you can see a billion news reports about shooters, about emergency instances, and it still doesn't make it real to you. But I think it's real for a lot of people right now, and there's a lot of people still affected by this. They're still looking, and it's been a few hours at this point, or about an hour and a half. It's just insane, and it's still sinking in. It's still crazy.
So she lives in this area. She can't go back to her home while this is still an active situation here. A lot of places are blocked off here still. We just saw some more state police cruisers coming in here to the scene. And now there's a backhoe that they're passing through this area, but this is the entrance to the Rite Aid distribution center, the Enterprise Business Park. It says here on the sign, and this is where Spasucia Road ends. This is where at 9:06 this morning those first calls came in for help, and police later confirmed that this was a mass shooting incident here in Harford County. We saw them tow away one car from the scene. We don't know more than that. They are going to release more information just about a half hour from now when they hold a press conference, 11:45 this morning. But it has been nerve-wracking for the people who live and work in this area, and we don't know the extent of injuries to those victims, but we did see multiple ambulances leaving the scene, taking those victims to trauma centers in the area, and we're continuing to see police arrive with flashing lights here at the scene, as this is still a fluid and open investigation right here, where they have local police agencies from around the area and federal help in the form of the ATF and FBI. We expect to hear more details about possible weapons, how this unfolded, whether they know any motive. There are a lot of questions that still need to be answered in this, and they need to make sure that this area is safe, so they go meticulously through any buildings if need be to make sure that it's all clear. I'm seeing a number of ATF agents just across the street here right now on the scene here in what is an active situation here in Harford County on Spasucia Road, just across the street from the Enterprise Business Park, where this continues to unfold. And again, we'll get that briefing from police at 11:45, where they'll be able to fill in a few more gaps in exactly what unfolded here just after 9 o'clock this morning. Back to you on TV Hill.
You know, Mike, you had mentioned that they have to comb through this building. I'm looking at this right now. It says that this facility is 959,000 square feet. Now, it's unclear exactly where the shooting occurred, but we're looking live from Chapter 13, and you can see just how enormous this facility is. And with 1,000 or more employees having to be bussed out, this is going to take quite some time.
It is. We saw, I believe, 3 to 4 school buses, empty Harford County school buses, that came to the scene here just about the top of the hour. And as we mentioned, we believe those were evacuating employees from the building. But we don't know exactly where this shooting happened. And so as they fill in more details about that, and we'll alert the public that there's an all clear here. We don't know what exactly that they may have to search through, but typically when something like this happens, if it happens inside a building, as we saw in the mass shooting last year, they had to go meticulously through that building every inch to make sure that it was safe for people. But again, we're still waiting for details on how this shooting unfolded and about the number of victims and the extent of their injuries here. So as we look here across the scene, you can see this is the entrance to the Enterprise Business Park here in Harford County, Spasucia Road. You can see the active police presence here. We're going to get more details in just a few minutes as to exactly more on what happened, but this is still early in this investigation. I mean, it's good news that they have the power of the federal government here with the FBI and ATF that can provide those extra resources to the Harford County Sheriff's Office as they try to get to the bottom of what happened here. Back to you.
All right, Mike, thank you. And we also want to caution, we're following a lot of this on social media, and not all of the reports that are coming through are correct. So we are only going to report exactly what we're hearing from police. We are awaiting that media briefing, which should occur in about a half hour, give or take. Rick Ritter is live at the scene there, Mike Helgren as well.
Right. I think it's very important at this point to only go with information that we can validate. And so all we're saying at this time is that it is a active scene and there are multiple victims. That's all we know at this time officially. And here's a tweet from the Harford County Fire and EMS.
Yep. Fire units are working on a shooting incident at the Rite Aid distribution center in Aberdeen. Our understanding is there were several people shot. The scene is still very fluid. We do know that several area roads are also closed. That media staging area is where Rick is now, and we're waiting to hear from them.
All right. And again, Governor Larry Hogan has sent state police there to assist with the Harford County Sheriff's Department. The governor saying we stand ready to offer any additional support needed. There is tremendous response to this shooting scene, of course.
And then also, Kurt Saberg tweeted this out. He lives in Aberdeen. He said Aberdeen had a similar shooting 2 years ago. He's referring to the Edgewood shooting and also the Panera shootings. It's quite odd that they both happened so close and so close to Aberdeen Proving Ground, which, as we know, is very safe and very well protected. Let's go back out live to Rick Ritter, who is in that media staging area. And Rick, we were just talking about how eerie it is that you were just there not too long ago. And
well, less than a year.
Yeah, less than a year ago, and just that 95 corridor is very important for police to monitor where that suspect could be.
Well, Jess, Denise, I want to get to some new information that just came in literally moments ago. Sources have confirmed to the Associated Press that multiple people have been killed in this workplace shooting. Again, literally just moments ago, the Associated Press saying that sources tell them multiple people have been killed in this workplace shooting at the Rite Aid distribution center. So we know it took place around 9 o'clock this morning off Spasucia Road, right in that area. Chopper 13 was over that scene when multiple people, about dozens or so, really, I should say, hundreds, being evacuated from that building, a building where more than 1,000 employees worked, and we now know that multiple people were killed in this horrific shooting. That new information literally coming in just moments ago. We're expected to get an update here and now, about 20 minutes or so. This is the media staging area, Old Philadelphia Road and Short Lane Road, where we're expected to try and piece together this horrific tragedy and what took place. Now, jumping back to the other tragedy, literally almost a year ago, that took place about 7 miles away from here. So really wild, to say the least. this about these two shootings taking place literally so close. Obviously, that one at Advanced Granite Solutions taking place at a much smaller workplace, really only about 20 or 30 employees. With that, this situation a whole lot more scarier when you have 1,000 employees or so inside a distribution center where shots rang out and where multiple people we know have now been killed. But we are expected to get an update here within about 20 minutes or so. We know Governor Larry Hogan, he put out some information saying that the state is standing by, ready to assist in any way possible. He called this a horrific incident that took place, but we now know multiple people killed in this shooting, and we're expected to get an update here within the next 20 minutes or so.
Rick, it's interesting. We were talking about Edgewood. We were also talking about Panera. Since March in Maryland, we've had Great Mills, the Capital Gazette, and now this.
Well, yes, these are clearly volatile and explosive times. We do want to say, although what Rick is saying is correct, we are saying that this information comes from AP, a reporter at AP, who is citing Unofficial as a source, that there are multiple victims. If you know someone who lives, or who works in that area and you're concerned about them, we do not have any numbers in terms of victims. We don't have any identities in terms of victims. At this point, an AP reporter is citing Unofficial as a source of saying that there are fatalities in this mass shooting. Clearly extremely distressing for anyone who works there, lives around there, or knows someone who works there.
Right. We are also seeing some reports. We don't know how this person was connected, but it may have been a man or a woman. We don't know much about this suspect. We're waiting to hear from police in about 25 minutes. Again, some of the victims have been taken to Maryland hospitals, and some have been taken up to Delaware because of the close proximity to Delaware. That would be Christiana, I believe, would be the closest hospital to Aberdeen and near Aberdeen Proving Ground. And this is just south of Aberdeen. You're looking live at the school buses that are taking some of the employees from that Rite Aid distribution center. We're told there are about 1,000 employees there, and the building is about 959,000 square feet, so an incredibly large space.
Yeah, we're going to go back to Mike Helgren now, who is outside of the vicinity, awaiting, as we all are, official word from law enforcement. Once again, I want to say that the reports that there are multiple victims are being cited by an AP reporter who says that they got that information from a law enforcement official who wants to remain anonymous. So although we absolutely trust the validity of an AP reporter, we want to qualify that information for those of you who are extremely understandably distressed if you know someone who works there and is concerned. We, the media, are the last priority for law enforcement right now, but they are going to, within the hour, we are told, give us some sort of official statement, which we will carry, of course, live. But we're now seeing again, looks like a
medevac.
Medevac. And it's very distressing for people at home, I know, to hear things like multiple mass shooting, multiple victims. But let's go to Mike Helgren. Mike?
You have some new information,
Sure.
Mike.
Denise, the medevac helicopter is just over my head. There was another one landing here. We saw 2 Harford County public school buses. They brought them in empty just at the top of the hour, taking people out, heading out of the business park, followed by a number of police officers. And the AP, as you have been mentioning, and I want to read the exact bulletin, at 11:10 a.m., an official says multiple people have been killed in a shooting in Harford County, Maryland. The law enforcement official has knowledge of the shooting but wasn't authorized to discuss details by name and spoke on condition of anonymity to the Associated Press. The Harford County Sheriff's Office tweeted there was a shooting Thursday morning that involves multiple victims here. So the medevac helicopter is overhead here. There was another one we believe was landing there. We're monitoring the situation on the ground, but also from Chopper 13. And then 3 school buses filled with people from this business park. They were just taken out of the main entrance here, which is where we are located on Spasucia Road, followed by a number of law enforcement vehicles just leaving the scene here in Harford County. But again, we're waiting for official word on any fatalities from the Harford County Sheriff's Office at their press briefing, which is scheduled at 11:45. So a fluid scene here outside this Rite Rite Aid Business Park, Enterprise Business Park, and still law enforcement officials or officers arriving here at the scene. Again, the Associated Press report is that multiple people have been killed in this shooting in Harford County. I see a state police spokesman just here at the scene, just across the street, but we're thinking that Harford County Sheriff's Office leading this investigation will be providing that briefing as we get more. Oh, and you can see from our live camera here on the ground, I'm watching the medevac chopper just a few feet in front of me as it goes down. Here, just off Spasucha Road, that chopper is landing now here at the scene. We don't know how this situation unfolded, if there perhaps are more victims inside that they're trying to rescue, seriously injured victims, and that medevac would need to transport to a trauma center here. But we're watching that chopper land at this business park, at this Enterprise Business Park right now. And moments ago, we saw them evacuate 3 busloads of people before the chopper, which circled around us, is now landing here at the business park, where, according to the Associated Press, multiple people are dead after a shooting that unfolded just after 9 o'clock this morning, with those emergency calls first coming in then.
Sorry to interrupt you, Mike, but there has been an update from AP. Again, this is the sources AP, that when we say multiple dead, they are now saying 3 people are dead in this shooting. There may be many more injured, but according to the AP, there have been deaths and 3 people are dead. They're not saying, obviously, identities of those people or whether a suspect is among them. This event happened over 2 hours ago, and the fact that a medevac has just landed again means that either they have, in their search of this facility, found another victim, or there has been a dramatic development within the last hour or so, because it just, as we've been watching live, landed just now.
Sure. We also know that the suspect is not yet in custody. We are getting some reports about that suspect, but again, we're waiting for confirmation from police. Mike told us earlier today that some of the victims have been transported to Delaware. The closest trauma center is, in fact, at Christiana. The other closest trauma center would be shock trauma. And then, of course, we have Upper Chesapeake Medical Center as well. So several areas nearby where victims could have been transported. But as Denise mentioned, yes, 3 have been confirmed dead at this point, according to the Associated Press. However, there may be many more victims, and that's what we're trying to figure out. Again, at this point, we aren't getting much information about the suspect. We don't know if that suspect worked at that facility. We do know about 1,000 people are employed there. That facility is incredibly large in that business park. Also, Denise, we should mention, if you're just tuning in, Church Creek Elementary is on a lockdown, but that is out of an abundance of caution. That would be the closest school to that area, but of course that's just because the police, we don't know, we're still waiting for information on that suspect. So it's unclear if they're looking for the suspect, if they have that suspect, or what.
All right, we will continue to cover this live. Again, the latest information, a mass shooting, an active scene, 3 people dead.
Live from Television Hill, this is WJZ Breaking News.
Well, if you're expecting your regular programming, we are interrupting it all this morning to follow, if you're just joining us, a shooting that has taken place this morning at about 9:06 at an industrial park in Harford County. You are looking live at the scene right now at what we believe is a Rite Aid distribution center. This is where we believe the shooting took place. What we know now is that it is an active scene. There are multiple victims. It is being called a mass shooting, and at this time, we believe 3 people have been confirmed dead in this shooting. That is what we know at this time.
We're going to go back to Ritter. And Rick, we were talking about this in Edgewood. That was just 11 months ago, where 3 Marylanders were killed in that incident less than 10 miles away.
Harford County has dealt with an insane amount of grief, for a lack of better words, here over the past couple of years. As you mentioned, that shooting taking place literally about 11 months ago at Advanced Granite Solutions, an area, or excuse me, a workplace that had only about 20 or 30 employees or so. This shooting taking place at the Rite Aid distribution center with more than 1,000 employees. And Denise and Jess, you both had mentioned the new information that just came in moments ago from the Associated Press. They are now reporting and contributing to a source that 3 people have been killed in this shooting. Again, we now know that 3 people were killed in the shooting. That, according to the Associated Press, who is citing a source. This all took place around 9 o'clock this morning off of Spasucia Road at the Rite Aid Distribution Center. Chopper 13 over that scene just a little while ago, and we saw dozens or hundreds of employees being evacuated from that warehouse and being put on the buses. So obviously a scary, scary situation, and we're still trying to piece together all this information as it unfolds. We're live right now at the media staging area. This is Old Philadelphia Road, Short Lane Road, probably about a mile, maybe 2 from where this shooting took place, and we are expected to get an update here within the next 15 minutes. Now, a little while ago, I was told that a suspect has not been taken into custody yet, although there are some reports circulating that are suggesting different. But authorities say right now they cannot say whether that suspect has been taken into custody, and hopefully we're going to get that information or an update on that within the next 15 minutes or so.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is what you're saying we can verify, Rick, which is a mass shooting and 3 dead. Scenes like this, there's a lot of panic, there's a lot of emotion in the community, as is entirely understandable, and so information starts getting spread like crazy. So we're going to stick with what we can verify, and we, according to an AP reporter who has a law enforcement source, 3 people are dead, and we do know it is still being called an active scene. So beyond that, they may themselves still be gathering information. We know that Harford County Sheriff's Office there, FBI from Baltimore Field Office is tweeting out that it is responding, as well as the ATF, alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and explosives. Their agents are responding as well as state police. The governor sends state police there as well. So this is a very massive location, and you have an army of law enforcement there right now. And I imagine that, as we say in these scenes, that, well, take a look right there. You have, looks like National Guard. You have a tremendous search going on right now for any victims and or a suspect.
We're also waiting to hear from Aberdeen police regarding this shooting in PERRYMAN. They're saying that they are working on a staging area for families to be reunited. That information is forthcoming. We will bring you that information as quickly as possible. We're going to go now to Nicole, who is standing by in the queue, because as Denise and I mentioned, so much of this information is being filtered in through social media, and that's how the police, the ATF, and the fire department are also providing information to the media as well, so we can convey that information to you. Nicole, what are you seeing?
Well, Jess and Denise, a lot of information is coming in, especially with the new updates. We're seeing people marking themselves safe on Twitter. We also have a tweet from Scott Wilson. He says, "I can't even put into words how I feel about the active shooter in Aberdeen, my hometown. I'm hurt and angry that this keeps happening, and I'm afraid of how close they're getting. But to some people, this still won't be a wake-up call, making me even more angry." We also have a tweet up from the governor, Larry Hogan, who says, "We are closely monitoring the horrific shooting in Aberdeen. Our prayers are with all of those impacted, including our first responders, and of course, the state standing by, ready to offer any support." Now, if you're in the area, if you know anyone in the area, we do have a hashtag that we're using on WJZ's platforms. Be on WJZ is what we're using. If you send us any pictures, any videos, any information that you have that we can utilize and help the information get out to people, that's how you can do it. Denise.
All right, thank you, Nicole. Yeah, I can imagine this is a massive warehouse situation, so you have a lot of employees. We don't have numbers yet on how many people work in that area, but I'm sure it's in the hundreds. And all of those family members are at home right now, worried, and understandably so. So as soon as we get any verifiable information about identities or numbers, we will bring it to you, we promise, live, as we will remain on that scene with our at least 3 reporters we have there now.
Right. I just saw a short time ago, Denise, I think this was before you joined us, about 1,000 employees there.
Yeah, understandable. Look at the size of that massive installation there.
Right, more than 900,000 square feet facility, and there are about 3 different Rite Aid distribution centers in this area. Or I should say on the East Coast. This is one of the largest. So they house all sorts of, they said medicines, medications rather, in all different parts. So as Mike was explaining, they have to comb through every area. Let's go back to Mike for more on that. Mike?
Well, we've also, Jessica, just learned that a number of patients were taken to Hopkins Bayview, and they're going to hold a press conference at 12:30, and we're going to be covering that, as well as at 11:45, so just 10 minutes from now, Harford County Sheriff's Office is going to be holding a briefing. We saw an ATF canine going into the scene. We also saw some ATF agents with large weapons going into the scene, and there's a semi right now that I'm watching as it comes out of the entrance to the center. This is the first vehicle that is not a police vehicle that we know that I have seen leaving the scene here. You can see still a large law enforcement presence as that semi leaves the business park here. About, I'd say 10 minutes ago, we saw the medevac chopper land. So we don't know if they're trying to help out victims. We have not seen that chopper leave at this point. So you see the semi there leaving the business park here in Harford County. And you also see this is another police vehicle behind it as police have blocked off this scene, secure scene, but a lot of federal agents here. And I may have lost my audio, my IFB connection to you, but again, we're waiting for a briefing in about 10 minutes here. I hear you again there. There you see the rescue vehicle, Harford County rescue vehicle, armored-looking vehicle here, and the Harford County Sheriff's Office vehicles behind it. There's a whole contingent here coming in, 4 different vehicles, including a militarized vehicle that is heading to the entrance here of this Rite Aid distribution center on Spasucia Road. 4 different vehicles. We saw that medevac chopper land just a few moments ago, and that is still here on the scene. But again, they're bringing in more vehicles, a militarized vehicle here. According to the Associated Press, just to repeat from their sources, 3 people dead here. We're still waiting to hear more information about the suspect here, but you can see this is still an active scene as this contingent of vehicles heads into the business park here, the scene where this shooting happened just about 2.5 hours ago. Again, 3 people dead here on the scene. A briefing, that's according to the AP, a briefing to come in just a few minutes, and still an active scene as more law enforcement officers head here. I see another 4, 5, 6, 7 vehicles. They're just coming and coming here on Spasucia Road here at the entrance to the facility here. So, it looks like something has happened. We don't know what. We don't know the status of the suspect or suspects here. We're waiting to hear more information officially from the Sheriff's Office. But again, a large contingent of law enforcement officers here at the scene, and we'll continue to monitor the situation here on Spasucia Road.
Well, we were looking, while you were talking, Mike, we were looking live at a staging area, looks like in front of one of the buildings, as though law enforcement is about to enter that building. As we know from these situations, they have to take every precaution. They have no idea if there are explosives left behind. We don't know. The suspect could still be inside. If the suspect is inside, which area of which building? So, yeah, that's why there's this enormous presence, because they have to deal with a facility that is going to until the situation is under control, a facility that takes people at every entrance and scouring every inch. And as of 11:25, it was still being called an active shooter scene, which means if there is a suspect who has been arrested, we have not been informed, and we have no way of telling you that that has happened in a verifiable, even though there are rumors out there, we have no way of saying, yes, somebody is in custody. As far as we know, this is still an active scene. And as we look at it, that's exactly how it appears.
Right. And Mike, we're going to stay with you if you can for just a minute. If somebody is just tuning in, we are awaiting a press conference from police. Tell us exactly what's going on. Reset the scene for us, if you will.
All right, 9:06 this morning, the first calls came in for a shooting here at this Rite Aid distribution center, which is on Spasucia Road in Harford County, about 10 minutes from where that workplace shooting happened last year. They're familiar, unfortunately, with dealing with things like this. The Associated Press first reported that there were multiple fatalities, then provided some more details that there were 3 people dead, citing an anonymous law enforcement source. We are still waiting for official word from the Harford County Sheriff's Office. They are keeping people back from the actual business park. However, you can see that they have a large law enforcement presence here, including federal agents from the ATF and the FBI who are here investigating. Just about 10 or so minutes ago, we saw the medevac touch down here, and that was after they had evacuated some people who work here on 3 Harford County school buses. And then moments ago, you saw it live here on WJZ when a large contingent of law enforcement officers came here, including a militarized vehicle. And what typically happens in situations like this, if something happened in a building, they have to go inch by inch in that building and make sure that it's clear that the threat is gone. We don't know how many other people may have been injured, although that AP report says 3 dead. We don't know the extent of other injuries. We don't know how this unfolded or the extent of who they are looking for, if they're looking for anyone in multiple suspects, whether that is the case. However, we did see them tow away a gray Honda Civic that had crime tape around it that was just right here behind me when we first arrived at the scene. We don't know if that is connected in some way to this, but they towed that away, I'd say about an hour ago from the scene here. And we also have seen multiple law enforcement agencies still arriving here at the scene, and that medevac has not yet, as far as I've been able to hear, because I did hear it, was right across the street when it landed. We did not see that medevac chopper take back off, and we know that a number of people are being treated at trauma centers in the area, including at Johns Hopkins Bayview, and they're going to hold a press conference we're hearing around 12:30 today. WJZ will be covering that, where we hope to get more details about that. But there are a number of trauma centers in this area, from Baltimore stretching up to Delaware, that could take these patients, and we're still waiting on a number of injured and perhaps some just basic details about the severity of those injuries. And a lot of people here, some people are not able to get to where they live. They're concerned. We talked to one woman who said how chaotic it was, how it seemed like all hell broke loose in those moments after 9 o'clock as police were first responding here en masse and trying to investigate this and figure out what exactly happened here. So again, it appears that just a few moments ago, there was a lot of activity. Now I'm seeing some, I believe, ATF and people in police vests, and one of them has a large weapon. As she's walking out of the scene here, we're just across the street from this business park, and we're seeing, it looks like a little bit more activity, a number of agents here on the scene. I would say at least 3 dozen of them here, and they've got, this is Spasucia Road, this is the entrance to this business park. Harford County Sheriff's Office is going to hold a press conference in just minutes from now, Denise.
Yeah, that's what I was going to sorry to interrupt you, Mike, to remind people that, and it does look like they are beginning to convene for some sort of an official news conference. In this era of mass shootings, sadly, we have a new vocabulary, and one of them is fluid. The situation is fluid. I would say that the situation here is fluid. People who live in the vicinity of this industrial park are being urged to not come in the area, to stay out of the area. I know your first instinct, if you know someone who works there and you're frightened, is to go there. But really the best thing to do, as hard as it might be, would be right now to stay where you are and to continue to listen to news sources and to wait for word on someone that you may be concerned about. We hope to get you that kind of information in just a few moments when we're supposed to have a news conference with the officials at the scene.
Right. Harford County Sheriff also reminding people to follow them and listen to them for any official information. If you have a family member inside, you will be reunited with that family member. We're just trying to determine exactly where that place will be, where that location will be. We saw several school buses taking the employees out of the building. We believe that there are at least 1,000 employees that work at that facility. That facility is incredibly large. Police are still combing through that area. Chopper 13 is overhead, and it's very difficult for them to get close because, as you saw, those medevac helicopters, as recently as 5 minutes ago, were still landing at that location. Mike also mentioned that some of the victims are being taken to Delaware hospitals, Maryland hospitals. We understand now Johns Hopkins, Bayview location, as well as
trauma centers.
The closest trauma centers would be shock trauma, of course. Also, Christiana has a very good trauma center as well. But remember, there's a lot of information that's still floating around out there, especially regarding the suspect in this case, and we don't want to report incorrect information. At this point, it's unclear whether that suspect is in fact in custody. We do know that the shooting situation has stopped.
Right. I would say that in this particular instance, in terms of national media, I would trust your local media, because a lot of national media is reporting things that aren't necessarily correct because they're gathering information as quickly as they can. The best word is going to come directly from law enforcement, which is going to happen in just a few moments, and that is going to be the real information that we can rely on. Unfortunately, we do have to say that it seems to be absolutely clear at this point there are fatalities, and the number we have right now is 3. But there also were multiple injuries, clearly just because of the response. We can say that.
And Denise, you know, we've been talking about this. If this seems oddly familiar, it is. 11 months ago, we also had this very similar shot over Edgewood. I mean, that wasn't even a year ago. Yeah, and that was when Roddy Prince shot 3 employees at Granite Solutions and then went up 95, and there was another shooting in Delaware as well. We also know that there was the Panera shooting also in Harford County. This one at the Rite Aid Distribution Center, and then since March, a shooting at Great Mills High School, and then also the Capital Gazette here in Maryland. And it's disturbing to continue covering these. We're going to show you a shot too. We understand the medevac helicopter is now leaving. We just saw it land a few minutes ago. Where it is heading, it's unclear to us. Again, we're still waiting for that information. That press conference was supposed to start about 2 minutes ago, but we know how that goes in these fluid situations.
And, you know, we're making assumptions here, but I am making the assumption that if a medevac just landed and is taking off now 2.5 hours after the event initially took place, that means either they are discovering more people who are injured or something has developed, something dramatic has developed recently. But again, we'll find that out, we hope.
Denise, we're getting this too from the Rite Aid and the Associated Press spokeswoman. Susan Henderson would be with Rite Aid, told the Associated Press on Thursday morning the shooting happened at a support facility adjacent to a larger building. 3 people, as we know, have been killed. The law enforcement official has knowledge of the shooting but wasn't authorized to discuss. We're waiting for that officially. But so a support facility adjacent to a larger building, as we mentioned, that Rite Aid distribution center is quite big.
Right. And we don't know. I mean, initially the word went out, workplace shooting, but a workplace shooting could mean anything. It could be because of some domestic dispute. It could be because this is a Rite Aid distribution center, a robbery, some form of robbery. We just don't know. There are hundreds and hundreds of unanswered questions right now. The most important, of course, are who are these victims, and so that their families can rest easy. Who is just fine? Who works here, who has been evacuated and is just fine? Those are the most important questions we hope to get answers to in the next 10 to 15 minutes from law enforcement, who have said that they're going to have a news conference at 11:45. Obviously, that can float because they're about as busy as you can imagine any
One of the things, too, we're getting a lot of reports, and we heard from Nicole Baker just a short time ago saying that people were checking in on Facebook saying that they are okay. I see someone saying that their son works in the main Rite Aid distribution center, which we're being told is still on lockdown. Parts of it are still being held on lockdown as those employees are being taken out. He works there for, gosh, a decade and knows some of the people there. So people are still checking in to let loved ones know that they are are okay. We still do not have word on that family reunification center. We are told that within the next 5 minutes, that media briefing will be underway. Rick Ritter has been standing by live there as well. Rick Ritter and Mike Helgren, this has become all too familiar for them, covering these workplace shootings. And Denise, it was a good point that you mentioned. You know, sometimes these are domestic situations, and it unfortunately occurs at a workplace. In other situations, it is a shooting where it's a disgruntled employee, as we're all aware.
Well, anything. This could be anything at this point. We really don't know. As I say, it's a drug distribution center. Could have been a robbery. We literally know nothing that we can give you, any information that we can give you that's verifiable at this point, except that there are sadly, three people who have lost their lives this morning, and we have been told that is not including a suspect. Those are 3 victims, as far as we know at this point.
All right, let's go back now to Mike Helgren with more. And Mike, that medevac helicopter has taken off again. That sounds like it's behind you?
It did. I just literally like a minute ago, it just went up over those trees and flew back over that way. So it first landed here roughly 10 to 15 minutes ago. Just the course of events from what we're seeing here, there were several empty Harford County school buses that were brought in here to the business park, and then probably about a half hour later, we saw those buses filled with people leaving the business park with a number of members of law enforcement, and then we saw the medevac chopper land here at a large, looked like a large building just right here at the business park, just almost across the street from where I am. And then it was probably 10 there was a militarized vehicle and a large line of law enforcement that came in to the business park, to the scene, and then we saw that medevac chopper take off. Now we're seeing a number of law enforcement vehicles leaving after that medevac chopper took off, and as we mentioned from the Associated Press, we heard from a Rite Aid spokeswoman, Susan Henderson, that the shooting happened at a support facility adjacent to a larger building here, a support facility adjacent to a larger building here at the scene. So we are thinking that perhaps there were still some injured in there, and so that they wanted to clear out as many civilians as they could, brought in that medevac chopper, then brought in more law enforcement support, and then that medevac chopper left the scene. And as we were telling you earlier, here in Harford County, where they've dealt with this before, they have trained paramedics to come in and deal with these mass shootings, so that it can be a dangerous, active, fluid situation, and they've trained them to be able to work around that and be able to protect their own lives while they're trying to save people, so that someone doesn't bleed to death, or who's injured isn't stuck there while they're waiting for police to clear the building. Sometimes they will bring in those first responders to an area that they believe is reasonably safe to try to get to any victims, and then they can get them quickly triaged and get them out and get them to safety before police have totally given the all clear on these buildings. And that has saved lives. We saw that they did that in the shooting that happened last year with the workplace shooting involving Roddy Prince, who went on the run and who drove up to Newark, Delaware, and shot someone there. He still has to go on trial in Maryland, but his trial in Delaware is over. But we saw that they had already had that training, and we talked to some people with the sheriff's office who had been through that training. So unfortunately, they're well versed in that. Again, that medevac chopper just left here. We're waiting for word on the extent of injuries, but we know there are multiple injured as well who were taken to Christiana, who were taken to Johns Hopkins Bayview, and we're expecting to hear more from at least Johns Hopkins Bayview later on today.
Quick question for you. Are you hearing anything? I'm getting word that they are telling people to go to Havre de Grace to reunite with family members, but I'm trying to get confirmation on that. Level Fire Company?
That may well be true. However, actually, the Harford County Sheriff's Office just said that they were a few minutes delayed, but that they're going to get their briefing underway. So I'm thinking that they'll, provide more information about that when they do their press briefing. All we know from the scene right here is that they evacuated people out. They brought the medevac in. They have a large presence here, and we've seen a lot of ATF agents who are armed with their vests here. We saw some activity just a few moments ago, and we still see a number of police officers standing by here on Spasucia Road, the entrance to this distribution center. And from what the Rite Aid is telling us is that the shooting happened at a support facility that is next to a larger building. But they've got to go through here, I'm thinking, and make sure that they, cover every square foot of this, so that if there is any risk or danger here, that that this is safe for people. So this is still a developing situation here, and police have not stood down yet. I mean, you can see from these pictures just how many law enforcement are here, as this the number just has kept growing since this shooting was first reported a few minutes after 9 o'clock this morning.
It's ironic in a terrible way that this would happen again in Harford County, because generally Harford County is a very safe county. The Sheriff Gahler would want everyone to know that. When they lost 2 deputies, it was the first law enforcement they'd lost in decades.
Right.
And but this is again a large workplace area, and there are more guns than people in this country, so these shootings continue to happen.
Yeah, it was just 11 months ago that Roddy Prince shot 3 employees at Edgewood. Also interesting, Denise, that you say that Capital Gazette is now following this as well, and they just lost their own employees in a workplace shooting. This has happened 3 times here in Maryland. This is the 3rd incident since March. We had Great Mills High School where there was a shooting, the Capital Gazette, and then of course, as you mentioned, Panera, that was 2 years ago, and then Edgewood last year, and now this one at the Rite Aid Distribution Center. And it's deja vu here, where we're sitting up here and we're telling you about a workplace shooting and a suspect and casualties and people being medevaced to area hospitals, and it's so disturbing to continue following this.
Yeah, it's disturbing. It's our job, but we're also citizens, and it disturbs us as well. Kimberly Eden has now arrived at the scene, and I know you were tweeting a couple hours ago, Kimberly, that on your way to work you saw the response at this scene. Where are you located now, and what have you learned?
Well, Denise, right now we're pushed back from the scene. We're at Short Lane and Old Philadelphia Road. We're staged here waiting for the press conference to begin. This, of course, gives authorities the room to work at the scene. We're not even within a viewing area of the scene, but we are waiting on a press conference to begin here any minute now. And as we see in these situations, this will likely be the first of many press conferences today. Law enforcement is generally very good about giving us any information they can when they can. So we expect that these press conferences could be staggered throughout the day as the situation unfolds. I know you guys keep referring to this as a fluid situation, and in the sense that it's an active shooter situation. That is, of course, not the case from what we're told, but it is a fluid situation in the aspect that this investigation is really just beginning. We first heard reports of an active shooter at a few minutes after 9 this morning, so this is just less than 3 hours into this investigation. So generally we will get information from police as they can release it, but we've also seen that this has now become a multi-agency effort, as so many of these mass shootings do. So that information will have to be coordinated between various law enforcement agencies, and of course they want to make sure that they get this right. And we've already seen Harford County cautioning on social media to make sure that you're getting your news from a credible source, because so often we see the rumor mill start going in these situations, but they are promising us an official update here any moment, and as soon as we can bring that to you, we of course will. We know a lot of people are closely watching this situation.
Kimberly, I want to interject here for a second. It seemed to imply that you now can confirm that it is no longer an active shooter scene. Is that correct?
Those are the reports reports that we've seen on Twitter, Denise, but again, we are waiting on all of this to be confirmed. But again, they are still on scene. Those are some of the reports that we're seeing on Twitter. We're also seeing reports that other businesses nearby may be locked down. But again, this is a very new investigation, and we are waiting on authorities to update us.
Right. And those reports that you're seeing on Twitter, are those from reliable sources? Because I'm happy to hear it if it's correct. I want to know if indeed it is no longer an active scene.
Well, Denise, I'll work to clarify that here in a few minutes, but
Great.
That's what we're seeing largely reported.
Good. I hope that's correct.
All right, Kimberly, thank you so much. If you are just joining us and you are tuning in for WJZ News at noon, we are following breaking news in Harford County, where we have confirmed that 3 people have been killed.
Live from Television Hill, this is WJZ Breaking News.
And welcome back, everyone. I'm Jessica Cartelia with Denise Koch. We have been on the scene all morning. We have crews. We are waiting a press conference from Harford County Sheriff's Department after 3 people were killed and several more injured in a workplace shooting at the Rite Aid distribution facility in Harford County.
Indeed, we say workplace shooting because that is where it happened, but we don't have any idea in terms of motivation, etc. The only information we can tell you right now, as Jessica said, is that 3 people have been killed. There are others who are injured. We don't have exact numbers for you. It was initially described as multiple, but that's all we know at this point in terms of victims.
We're going to go live back to Mike Helgren, who was one of the first on the scene with the very latest. Mike?
So we're here at Spasucia Road. We're across the street from this distribution center. What Rite Aid is saying is that it had occurred at a support building that is next to a larger building here. We've seen a large and continuing police presence here. And as we've been reporting, 3 dead, but we're still waiting to hear from the Harford County Sheriff's Office. Multiple injured who have been taken to several trauma centers in the area, including Johns Hopkins Bayview. We have seen ATF, FBI, federal agents on the scene here trying to assist in helping to find out what exactly happened. We saw the medevac chopper here land, stay here for about 15 minutes and then take off again. And we saw several militarized vehicles arriving here at the scene at this distribution center. The first calls came in at 9:06, and we're seeing.
All right, so we have been watching this story unfolding, a shooting just northeast, I think it is, of Baltimore, and it looks like police are getting ready to update us with a press conference, so let's listen in.
I just briefly want to remind everyone that this is still a very fluid investigation. Watching the reports this morning, there was a lot of misinformation already out and circulating, and so I please urge you to follow the Sheriff's Office on our social media feeds. That will be information that is confirmed and vetted through our office. We will continue to update you throughout the day. We will not take any questions at this time after the sheriff and the county executive statements. And I will let you know on Twitter again when the next media briefing will be. Thank you.
What's the Twitter, ma'am?
Harford_sheriff.
Okay, thank you. Another tragic event for us here this morning in Harford County. To begin with, I want to thank everyone for their patience. Unfortunately, the county exec and I and all of our law enforcement partners have been standing here before. We stand here yet again today. Many people have been affected by the events this morning. And our prayers and thoughts and prayers of the Harford County Sheriff's Office go out to all those affected. We are so preliminary into this investigation. I know there's a million questions. We're not going to take any questions today. I know you have many, but as Christy said, it's so important that we deal in facts. There's families that are irreparably harmed from today's event. We don't want to make it as if you could make it worse. You certainly can. We don't want to be part of that. We want to release facts, so please allow us the time to gather facts and share those with you. I'm going to give you as much information as we can right now, even though it's very preliminary and it's very limited. At about 9:06 this morning, a report came into dispatch center from the Rite Aid distribution center of shots fired. Immediately, deputies, officers, troopers, other first responders responded. We were on scene just in over 5 minutes. Arriving law enforcement, fire, and EMS units quickly paired up together, got into the building in order to render first aid where appropriate. treat patients in an attempt to locate a suspect or suspects. At this time, I can confirm multiple wounded and multiple fatalities. Based on what we know right now, and again, very preliminary, the lone suspect in this incident is in custody and is in critical condition at a local hospital. It appears to be a single weapon that was used, a handgun, and there were no shots fired by any of the law enforcement officers responding to the scene. We do not believe that there's an additional threat anywhere to our Harford County community. We have set up a family reunification center working with the county executive and our county partners at the Level Volunteer Firehouse. And again, this investigation is very early. I and our office will be happy to give you more information as it becomes available. Again, I ask you keep the victims of today's tragic event in your thoughts and prayers. And I also have to thank our fellow first responders. We have responders here from the federal government who were on scene within minutes, the FBI, the DEA, ATF, the state police, MDTA police, natural resources, the local municipal departments of Aberdeen, Harvey, Grace, and Bel Air, you name it, as we've seen, unfortunately, in our community before. When something like this happens, you can't have enough police and you can't have them fast enough. And we are very fortunate here that everyone works so well together and responds so well together that we were on scene and able to get as much aid in as quickly as possible. So that's what we have for you at this time. Christy will put out a little later when we're going to have some additional details, and I know you're anxious for them. We'll be as timely as we can. And the county executive did want to offer a few thoughts this morning. Sir?
Thank you. Could I get your name?
Sheriff Jeff Gahler, Gahler.
Thanks, Sheriff Gahler. Barry Glassman, the Harford County executive. I just got off the phone with Governor Hogan a few moments ago and updated the governor on the incident so far as we know it. He offered all of his resources available under state government. We certainly appreciate the Maryland State Police, all the allied agencies that responded. I followed this probably from the moment the call came in on our dispatch and listened to the radio transmissions. Unfortunately, in today's world, we have active shooter drilling and drills, and I can tell you and tell our Harford County citizens that every agency performed at the top of their profession, and the response from all our allied agencies was great. Our volunteer fire and EMS system responded with medical units. So I am thankful to all the agencies that came out to help us today to get through this, which is becoming a too often occurrence, not only in Harford County, but in the country. So with that said, we really reach out to those families that are suffering right now, that have lost loved ones, and offer our services as we begin to get them reunified, not only with loved ones lost, but with workers that have been displaced. So I certainly thank all our courageous men and women that have helped us this morning.
Sheriff, are you suggesting that the suspect shot him or herself?
Jane, we're not going to give any additional information right now. Again, this is very fluid, and you know us, we will be sure to provide you the information as soon as we have it, so follow our feeds, and I will absolutely let you know when the next media briefing will be today, and hopefully we'll be able to nail down some of those other details and give you a better picture of what unfolded.
Can you say
thank you so much.
Of her own gun?
Thank you.
So there we have the latest information about this shooting. It started about 9 in the morning. We know now, though the officers didn't say that, at the Rite Aid distribution center in this sort of industrial park area. Officers were called. They got to the scene within 5 minutes and immediately started working on people that they saw there that were wounded. The reporting is, though this press conference has not confirmed it, the reporting from, I believe, AP is that 3 people were killed, multiple people wounded, and the suspect is in critical condition in the hospital. What they said was that no officers fired their gun. So we don't know if the suspect is in critical condition because he or she shot himself or if someone else had a gun on the scene. But at this point, all they're willing to say is that no officers shot their gun, but the suspect is in custody in critical condition in the hospital.
So CBS News security analyst Paul Violas is with us now. He joins us on the phone. Paul, Paul, one of the things that I think is interesting for our viewers to perhaps understand is where this happened is at a Rite Aid distribution center. And in a statement, the Rite Aid folks say that this is a large facility that employs nearly 1,000 associates. This is where products are received and processed for delivery, and it's part of a larger distribution center. My guess is that there would be a lot of security at a facility like this, and there's still a lot of questions. But what are the questions that you would have if you were assessing this as a law enforcement officer?
My first question right now, Vlad, referenced the shooter. I know there's been a lot of speculation as to male or female. I'm hearing female. But the first thing I'd want to know is, was the person an employee there? And if not, did the shooter have any kind of relation to people that were employed at the distribution center? Because when we start to break down just the demographic that we know of right now and the pedigree that there has been provided, this looks like either a workplace violence-related incident or a domestic violence-related incident. But that's really going to have a lot to do, Vlad, with respect to the relationship from the shooter to the location.
So if this turns out to be a female shooter, how odd is that? How rare is that?
Well, you know, Anne-Marie, it's unfortunately, it's not as rare as most people think. I mean, granted, over the last 5 years, we've seen a significant move of the needle as it relates to females involved in violent-related incidents, whether they be domestic violence or workplace-related. So it's not as rare as you think. Clearly, the majority being men. There's no doubt about that. But it's not uncommon to see women now.
So Paul, is it just, again, based on your years in law enforcement that, and I was referencing the distribution center because my guess would be that there would be a good level of security at a place like this, so that, and you pointed out that it could be workplace or a domestic altercation. Somebody would have to know and would have to be trusted to bring in a weapon to a facility like this, unless there are people that walk around this distribution center with weapons. My guess is that they came in, concealed that weapon, and knew exactly what kind of level of security was in place to be able to get a weapon into a place like this.
Chances are you're absolutely correct, Vlad. But, one of the things that we've seen, and you and I have talked about this, and Emery, you and I have talked about this a number of times, and shared this with our viewers, is that, it's not uncommon for industrial parks such as this in areas outside of major cities, and this is not in the major cities, we know it's outside of Baltimore, to have far less security than what the standard of care would call for. And what I mean by that, Vlad, is that it wouldn't be uncommon if we were to go out there to see that they had no outer perimeter security, and that they had very limited access control security into the building, maybe just a receptionist at a front door. So I don't know what's there, but I can tell you that it wouldn't be uncommon if we found out that were the case.
Yeah, I guess, this could fall into the category of one of those soft targets because it's a distribution center, so there are trucks coming in and out. There's a lot of movement, 1,000 people sort of running around. And, if you've ever sort of worked in something like this, and I remember back in college I worked in a facility similar to this, coming in and out is actually not that hard. There are doors, but then there are also, you can see where the trucks are parked. There's ways to get in and out where the trucks are parked. And I could see, particularly if this person worked there, how they could sort of walk in without being checked.
No, you're right, Anne-Marie. One of the things that Vlad said really struck home, too, as far as someone would know really the comings and goings of that particular location, because in distribution centers, they're so large, to Vlad's point, they're so large that oftentimes you have the invariable these people really don't think about as it relates to security, like leaving a back door open so people can come in and out to smoke. Now, people that are familiar with the location will know they can walk in and out of those locations, those points of access, without being detected if there were security. So there's a number of things that are going to have to be examined relative to how that person got access. That's going to be one of them.
And Paul, what kind of, this was referenced during the press conference, what kind of steps are law enforcement officials across this country doing as we see increasing numbers? We've always had mass shootings going back to Charles Whitman at the University of Texas, but we've seen increasing numbers of mass shootings across this country over the last 10 or 15 years. What kind? And you heard it referenced in the press conference where they said that this is something that they train for. Is this sort of just standard operating procedure now across all police departments, across all municipalities in this country, that they train and prepare for something like this?
It really is, Vlad. It really is. And what we're seeing, in answer to your first question, what we're seeing really is the big change is the use of technology in a public-private partnership with corporations and police. And what I mean by that is hypothetically in this particular industrial park, they have a schematic of their building or buildings. They share that with law enforcement and with SWAT teams, so they have that uploaded into their computers, so when they're responding, they can much more expeditiously and more efficiently identify where the shooter is and where to go and how to evacuate people safely. So this is something that's trained for. The use of technology with respect to sharing schematics, as well as the incorporation of artificial intelligence and closed-circuit television cameras that's being shared with law enforcement, enables them to have eyes on the property before they even get there. So these are things that multi-jurisdictions and multi-agencies are working together on, where years ago it would just be one agency. Now all of them are working together in the various jurisdictions around the country.
So we're showing some live video of the scene right now at what looks like probably the front door of the facility where there might be a receptionist. There's a couple of little sort of yellow markers on the floor there.
Isn't that usually for ammunition?
Or see some sort of evidence. You can see there's police tape right across the front door. So when we talk about how would this person get in, maybe they just walked in through the front door, which, would have been open to the public. What we're also seeing, Paul, is still, despite the fact that this scene is sort of under control, a lot of police officers, particularly armed police officers, walking through the area. What would be occurring now that it seems like they do have the only person responsible for this? The shooter is in the hospital, gravely injured. So what are officers doing now?
And they're looking for any type of collateral evidence. Now, remember, part of this, Anne-Marie, is that while you're seeing the officers on scene, there are officers off-site that are looking at all the video feeds that they're going to get from that industrial park. So they're following steps that this shooter may have taken, access of where that person came onto the outer perimeter itself, and then they're going to step back and create a perimeter past that. So that's what you're seeing. They're looking to see if there's any collateral evidence relative to the information they've been observing from the cameras to see if there's more information that they're already aware of.
Paul, I think most Americans can understand the history of workplace shootings in this country and why, from time to time, people have chosen to carry out violence against their coworkers or against a company or an institution that they work for. But explain just the evidence that exists out there from law enforcement, from the FBI, as to why, when there's a domestic violence situation, that someone would choose to, attack a spouse or somebody that they've had a relationship with at their place of business and not just at the home.
Well, you know what, Vlad? That is probably the most poignant question of all, and I'll tell you why. Because when domestic violence is the fastest growing aspect of workplace violence in the United States and has been for the last 7 straight years. Now, the reason why it's so dangerous at the workplace and why the workplace is chosen, because the workplace represents that one portion of that domestic violence batterer's life that he can't control, or in this case, maybe she can't control. Because remember, in domestic violence situations, so much of this is about controlling and manipulating and maneuvering a person's life away from others. The workplace is a safe haven to that person who's being battered. And that's why the domestic violence batterer, the person that is seeking to control that individual, has to do this at work, because it's really putting a flag on the ground to say no one's going to control that person but me. That's why we see this over and over and over again. And I get this from interviewing these people. That's why they're going to go to work, because they're going to prove no one controls this person but me.
That's fascinating.
It really is.
We should say that we really don't know what the situation is here. We don't know if this person worked here, if they had some sort of issue with the company, or if they, if it was a domestic. But, we've seen enough of these sort of workplace shootings, and often people, when they're able to walk in so easily, have a personal connection, and often they do work here. But we're still waiting for the details.
Paul, we thank you as always. We appreciate your insights.
My pleasure, Vlad. Anne-Marie, always a pleasure.
We're going to take you now back to our local station, WJZ. You're seeing some tweets up there that have been put up by the Sheriff's Department. Our affiliate, our station in Baltimore, is live at the scene in Aberdeen, Maryland. Let's take you there.
So the people know exactly what's happening and how to get in contact with people in the area. Jess, Denise?
Yeah, thank you, Nicole. And we can't say that enough. Twitter is like a rumor line, right? So you only pay attention to reliable tweets from reliable sources as well.
Sure, and same goes for Facebook and all social media. Let's go back to Rick Ritter. You know, something I keep saying as people say, thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers. We're tired of this. This has to stop. And Rick was live at a scene less than a year ago, and it's heartbreaking, Rick. And I know in the next few days, as you spoke with some of the employees, you know, who watched some of their coworkers gunned down, it has to stop.
He or she is in critical condition. There's no other way to put it. There's no other way to set it. It's horrific. It's a tragedy, and it absolutely needs to stop. When is enough enough? This is the third mass shooting in District 34 in the past 3 years. Of course, the last one before this one taking place exactly just about 11 months ago at Advanced Granite Solutions, a smaller business with about 20 or 30 employees. This one taking place at the Rite Aid Distribution Center with a little more than 1,000 employees, and we now know that multiple people were killed and multiple people were wounded. That per the Harford County Sheriff, who spoke about 10 to 15 minutes ago or so. And we keep talking about social media, and I'm sitting in here between my live shots trying to read social media and go through the posts that people are putting out there. This is the heartbreaking part about all this right now, is watching loved ones put posts up on social media, trying to get in contact with them and trying to find out if they're okay. One person putting out, anyone know, I'm not going to say the person's name, let us know she is okay. I cannot get a hold of her at the Rite Aid warehouse. Another person saying, my mom was in that warehouse. Can anybody get in touch with her? Does anybody have any information? So a lot of people still waiting to see if their loved ones are okay. Absolutely the heartbreaking part about all this. Of course, it's our job to sit here and report the facts, but Jess and Denise, you know, it's hard not to be a human too, even shed a tear in between all of this, knowing how difficult this is, not only for these families, but for the entire community going through this for the third time in 3 years. It is hard to fathom, to say the least.
It is indeed, and even if you just heard it, we're going to say it again, the phone number, because, excuse me, we don't have any answers for you yet. The phone number, 410-838-5800. So if you get a tweet from someone asking that, tell them to call this number, 410-838-5800. And that is the official hotline where you'll get any information that the Harford County Sheriff's Department has on someone that you may know and be so worried about.
Also, we're going to go back out live to Mike Helgren, but briefly, Church Creek Elementary was on a modified lockdown, and that was out of precaution. This is an industrial park area where Mike is standing by, and fortunately there are not many schools in that area, but because several of the roads had to be closed, this was solely as a precaution. Mike?
Well, I want to go through some of the tweets that the Harford County Sheriff's Office has sent out to just kind of run down some of their main points, that the sheriff expresses his thoughts and prayers to those involved and their families, that they're still in the preliminary stages of this investigation. One suspect is in custody, that the first report came out at 9:06 at the Rite Aid Distribution Center. They were able to get here within 5 minutes. They say multiple wounded and multiple fatalities. They have not given a number. Citing AP sources, there were 3 people dead, but again, Harford County Sheriff saying multiple fatalities and multiple wounded. And based on what the Sheriff's Office knows, this was a lone suspect. The suspect is in custody and in critical condition. We do not believe that there's a further threat to the community. They have a family reunification center set up at the Level Volunteer Firehouse, and that they're going to release additional information later today, that they thank their partners with the FBI, DEA, Maryland State Police, MDTA, Aberdeen Police, Bel Air Police, and Havre de Grace Police. This is a huge presence here of law enforcement that has helped with this. The ATF trying to use their resources to track that gun, a single handgun from what the sheriff said was used in this, a lone suspect in this shooting. We have seen medevac here, airlifting, we're believing, people who were injured from the scene. We saw people evacuated from the scene. But we don't know much more about the suspect at this point. Police are keeping that close to the vest right now, that person's identity. We don't know if that person has been interviewed or how. We know the person's in critical condition. We don't know the extent of that suspect's injuries in this. Police say they did not fire a shot in all of this. So we're waiting to hear more information. If you remember the shooting that happened here, the workplace shooting 11 months ago, we had a suspect who was on the loose. They were putting out that person's picture, looking for that person. We got a lot more information right off the bat in that case. In this case, it's different because they have the person in custody, so they don't want to say too much right now and piece this together exactly how this unfolded. We don't know the motive in all of this.
Mike,
back to TV Hill.
Yeah, although they refuse to take any questions, as you just said, they did make a specific comment, which was that no shots were fired by an officer, which would lead one to think that therefore the suspect must have shot themselves. They wouldn't answer that, of course, but that's the assumption. Would you agree?
I would agree, and that's what we've heard. But, you know, officially what they're saying is that this suspect was in critical condition and they did not fire any shots, or an officer did not fire any shots. But we'll eventually hear this person's name. We don't know if this person has been interviewed at this point because we don't know the extent of the injuries. I'm sure that's going to be part of all of this, a key component, and whether that person will cooperate in this and exactly why that person opened fire, their connection to a business here. We don't know exactly what the motive was. So a lot of questions that have yet to be answered. But as the sheriff's office has said repeatedly, this is all still very preliminary out here.
Mike, we are looking at a live picture from Chapter 13 as people are being evacuated from that building, and we know that they've been transported by buses. We know more than 1,000 employees worked at that facility. Also, we are expecting an update in a few minutes from Johns Hopkins, their Bayview campus, because we do know that some of the victims may have been transported there. Mike, just to ask you about the timeline as all this unfolded, you know, we're talking about just 10 minutes after 9 this morning, but then we saw that medevac helicopter land and then take off behind you, and that was less than an hour ago. So we keep saying that it's a fluid scene. It's unclear, but they are still responding.
Well, and we don't know the extent of the injuries, you know, of the people who were wounded. I was just wondering, we're live on the air, a representative of the sheriff's office, Christy Hopkins, we've spoken to you before in situations like this. Can you just, what would be your main message to the community right now?
I think that we're seeing more and more that these situations are not preventable, that no community is immune, no business is immune, and so preparation is key, training is key. We spend many hours, days training people on exactly what to do if there is a workplace violence incident or if there's an active shooter at the mall, at your workplace, wherever it may be. And it's two-pronged, so we have to continue to look at these situations and investigate why they happen, but we also need to be training people to understand what to do when this type of violence is at your doorstep. And that's what we saw here today. We saw people that were you know, taking the precautions that we've talked about in the news for so long, run, hide, fight. We've also saw the rescue task force put in place, something that we saw at the Advanced Granite when they had the shooting just over a year ago, where we are now trained to have EMS providers and law enforcement go in together to hopefully begin to save lives of victims inside.
And, you know, a lot of people are saying, you know, they want more information how this unfolded, but I know the sheriff's office is saying, you know, wait, hold on a little bit, right?
This is a very fluid investigation. There's a lot of information that's coming out that is, as quickly as it comes out, it's proven not to be true. And so I very much, and the sheriff very much, would like to ensure that the information that we're giving the community is true and factual, confirmed information. And we will continue to utilize our social media resources. We ask people to please follow us because that is your confirmed source of information. And believe me, we want to provide you answers as much as we would like to have them. So as soon as we know that, we're going to let the community know.
And I know even though we see still a large police contingent here, something that the sheriff stressed is that, like, right where we are, people shouldn't feel like they're in any danger right now.
We have no reason to believe that there is any further threat to the community.
Any other messages that you like for the community? I mean, we did a story with you about those first responders being trained, and I'm sure that made a difference with the other workplace shooting 11 months ago. And again today, I'm sure that kind of training was essential in this.
Absolutely, and those are the types of trainings that save lives.
Thank you very much. Well, we're continuing to gather information. I know you will keep us updated, and we'll get more from the Sheriff's Office later on. So that's the latest from the Sheriff's Office here, and we are awaiting a press conference from Johns Hopkins Bayview about more of the victims. The Sheriff's Office officially will not give a number. They are saying multiple wounded, multiple fatalities. That's going to come out. But, you know, I've had people ask on Twitter, like, well, we want to know what happened. Why can't they give out more information? Well, she said, just be patient. This is preliminary. You know, this is just all unfolding. There's still a lot that they're trying to learn, and they want to make sure that what is out there is accurate. So you heard it from the Sheriff's Office. You saw the press conference here, but we're going to continue to follow the situation, and still a large police presence here at the scene.
Yeah, and people still being evacuated from the building. It's understandable that they're not giving out information because their first priority is to treat the injured, and we don't know how injured those people may be. They may be critically injured. So the last thing they're worried about right now, they want to save their lives and then identify them and then notify the families and then notify the public. Let's continue the conversation because it's a good one that Mike was having there with the spokeswoman a moment ago. And let's go to Rick Ritter talking about active shooter drills, Rick. And I know that you heard the county executive talking about how they had just had an active shooter drill. And one would hope that everyone in that facility had had such a drill and knew what to do when they heard that there were shots fired there. Rick?
And Denise, Barry Glassman will be the first to tell you, unfortunately, they have a lot of experience with this in this county with 3 mass shootings in 3 years. So they know what they're doing. They know how to handle these situations. And that's why deputies were able to respond within minutes when the shooting first unfolded around 9 o'clock this morning. So as Mike mentioned, look, there's a lot of questions that are unanswered right now. A lot of people begging for more information, trying to dig and find out exactly what took place here. Now that we know that the suspect is in custody in critical condition, but in custody, you have to believe that ATF agents, the FBI, they're all going to be digging into that suspect's information right now, her background, or his or her background, who they're with, their cell phone records, their computers, trying to find out more about why this situation unfolded. Again, we know it took place around 9 o'clock this morning. Multiple people killed, multiple people wounded. Chopper 13 has still been over the scene, showing people being evacuated out of that Rite Aid distribution center, where there's more than 1,000 people employed, and we know that multiple people there have been shot, multiple people have been killed. Again, this is another tragic situation. Here we are. It seems like just yesterday I stood in this area 11 months ago reporting on another mass shooting, that one taking place at Advanced Granite Solutions. So going back to your point, Denise, obviously they have a lot of experience with this, unfortunately, and which is why deputies were able to respond so quick to this situation and hopefully stop it before it was a lot worse. But still, a lot of questions remain unanswered. We don't know exactly how many people were shot, how many people have been killed. That's all information that hopefully we'll get here within the next couple of hours. Here at the media staging area, things have quieted down quite a lot. Still some deputies on scene from the Harford County Sheriff's Office. It looks like the sheriff has left the scene. Hopefully we're going to be getting another update here within the next couple of hours. But if you're just joining us right now, just to rehash quickly, shooting at the Rite Aid distribution center, the warehouse off of Spinusha Road, multiple people killed, multiple people injured. The lone suspect now in custody, but in critical condition.
Live from Television Hill, this is WJZ Breaking News.
Okay, and as you just heard Rick Ritter's report, we are following that breaking news out of Harford County, where we know that multiple people have been shot, and we know that several people have been killed in a workplace shooting at the Rite Aid distribution center that's just south of Aberdeen. We also know that we are awaiting a press conference. Devin Bartolotta is standing by live. We'll get to her in just a little bit. We're waiting a press conference at Johns Hopkins Bayview, where security, according to Devin, has streets blocked, and many are wearing bulletproof vests at Bayview ahead of that press conference regarding victims that may have been taken there.
But this scene that you're looking live at is the scene of this large warehouse facility where they continue to evacuate workers. Although this happened in a building adjacent to the Rite Aid distribution center, they, as you can imagine, at this point want to evacuate the entire facility to search it and make sure it's secure and make sure there are no explosives or anything else on scene. But as Jess said, if you are just joining us, you need to be reassured in knowing that as far as the sheriff's office knows, it was a lone suspect who is in custody in critical condition, and the sheriff is notifying the community that they do not have reason to worry about a threat. As far as they know, there is no threat to the community that still exists.
Right. Also, we have seen medevac helicopters going in and out, one as recently as, just within the past half hour or so. So we keep saying it is a fluid scene, and by that we mean that, as you saw, many of those employees are still being escorted out of the building, and there is a very large presence there. We have the FBI on the scene, the ATF on the scene, Job of Magnolia fire crews from all over, and EMTs being brought out. Earlier, Mike Helgren spoke with a witness who says she saw more than a dozen ambulances near the area. So it is unclear how many people have been shot. But again, the nice, if there is a silver lining, there is no immediate threat now to the adjacent community. We had been saying earlier that there was a modified lockdown at one of the elementary schools. That would have been Church Creek, and that was completely as a precaution. Let's go back now to live to Mike Helgren, who is one of the first on the scene. Mike?
Jessica, we're still trying to gather information as to the motive, why this all unfolded. The sheriff did not take any questions. He wanted to tell the community that the area was safe, that there's no further threat. He provided some information about that lone suspect.
So we've been dipping into local coverage of the shooting, but it looks like doctors are speaking right outside of the hospital where a number of the victims are. That's Johns Hopkins Bayview Medical Center. Let's listen in.
I'm the trauma medical director here at Johns Hopkins Bayview Medical Center. About all I can tell you right now is that we received 4 persons from the incident this morning. They all came to us as a level 2 trauma center serving this part of Maryland. They're all under our care. We're waiting for confirmation that their families have been notified that they are here and have been notified of their condition before we can give you any specifics about their conditions. So really all I can tell you is that we received 4 patients with gunshot wounds earlier today.
Doctor, can you say if one of those people brought here is the shooter?
To us, they're all patients. We weren't there, so everything we know is second, third hand, so I really can't comment on whether one or not is the shooter.
Condition may have changed and they may have passed while being here?
So really we need to wait to make sure their families are notified before we can give any of you details about their specific conditions.
But all 4 have gunshot wounds?
Yes.
Multiple gunshot wounds?
Gunshot wounds.
And at this point, as far as their condition, it's critical. Can you provide any information?
I think all I really want to say is they all suffered gunshot wounds, and until we have a chance to talk to their families first, I think that it's best for the families to learn their conditions from us directly rather than through you, unfortunately. Yes.
Have any of the victims been taken into surgery?
Some of them have required surgical care.
Were they brought here by medevac or by ground?
By ground. I mean, Maryland has an excellent EMS system. It is pretty advanced and very well organized for our country, and so they were all beneficiaries of that MIMS system, and they were brought here very rapidly.
Can you give us an idea of their priority when they were first brought in?
So MIMS has it has a triage scale, and they were all considered priority 1 because they had suffered gunshot wounds.
Can you tell us how many are male and female?
I can't tell you that until we know the families know who's here.
What time did they arrive?
They arrived probably around 10 a.m.
Are they all adults?
They're all adults.
With their family members, any information they should have at this point if they believe that one of their
So I think there are some contact numbers for them to call. I don't know, again, if they call the hospital directly until authorities have notified them. I don't know that they're going to share more information about their specifics. So I believe that authorities are going to notify all the patients that receive, let them know that they're here. And then once we've had confirmation that that notification has happened, then we can give them more information.
Could you offer some insight to our viewers who may not be familiar with how the decision-making happens or when there is an incident like this and how the decision is made to bring a victim?
Yeah, so in the state of Maryland, again, there's an organization called MIMS, Maryland Institute for EMS Services. All the pre-hospital providers are trained on the MIMS protocols, and there are specific injuries that patients would do best if they came to a designated trauma center. And so if the EMS providers feel they meet those criteria, they will preferentially take them to designated trauma centers within the state of Maryland. For this part of the state, Bayview is the closest trauma center to serve them. Other ones in our region, of course, would be Johns Hopkins Hospital and shock trauma. But again, at least in the trauma community, we feel that there are certain patients whose outcomes are improved by going to designated trauma centers that are resourced, manned, and have the expertise to care for those patients. And this is one probably event where that will probably prove to be true.
Can you talk at all about any increased security at the hospital? You guys have blocked out the streets, but is there anything else that other patients need to be aware of or families that are trying to get to?
I think, at least at this time, we are business as usual. At first, when we didn't know how many patients we were getting, of course, we kind of adapted to be ready to take more patients, and we were ready to take more patients. Again, in the state of Maryland, the state, I think, tried to distribute patients best to where there was resources and capability available to take care of them. So they saw that we were receiving multiple casualties and we could take more, but of course they tried to offload the number of casualties by distributing them to other trauma centers in the region.
Are any of the patients saying anything about what happened?
I have not had conversations like that with any patient, so I can't say.
So could you just tell us behind the scenes what's happening at this point?
To be honest with you, what's happening now is after those patients came in after that single event, things went back to business as usual. You know, as a trauma center, we will get patients like this, either in multiple casualty events like this or single casualty events, and we take care of them. And once the surge occurred and we were comfortable that more patients weren't coming in, then it was business as usual again.
Are they in the trauma ICU?
So we have a single surgical ICU for trauma and other surgical patients, and if any of them merited that level of care, they would be there. But again, I don't want to comment on specific conditions of any patients.
Any idea when you might be able to share some additional information with us?
Once we have confirmation that the patient families have been informed that their loved ones are here and that we've had a chance to talk directly to the patient's families and let them know their conditions, and perhaps we can share more information about those specific patients.
But again, at this point, you're still reaching out to the families. They haven't all been contacted.
I think the police authorities are the ones that are reaching out for those contacts. Okay? All right, thank you.
So we're not getting a lot of information from doctors here at Johns Hopkins Hospital. There are a number of patients that are here, and he said that they are treating them for gunshot wounds. This all stems from a shooting that happened much earlier in the day, shortly after 9 o'clock at this Rite Aid distribution center. What we are learning is that the shooter entered the facility, began shooting. What we've learned, not from police officers, but from the Associated Press, and it has yet to be confirmed by police officers, is that at least 3 people were killed, but several more were also shot and wounded. And it appears as if the shooter was also wounded. Whether it was a gunshot wound or not, we don't know for sure, but that shooter is in critical condition in the hospital.
One of the reasons why there were a lot of questions thrown at that doctor, but he really wasn't giving a lot of information, is because some of the family members haven't been notified yet. So once we start to get more information from the hospital and from the police, we're going to share that with you. For the while, though, we're going to send you back to WJZ, our station in Baltimore. They're covering this. Let's listen in.
At this point, you're still reaching out to the families. They haven't all been contacted.
I think the police authorities are the ones that are reaching out for those contacts. Okay? All right, thank you.
We've been listening to a doctor at Hopkins Bayview talk about the 4 patients who were taken there to their trauma center. What's important that he said is that there are 4 patients. They are all being treated at the trauma center. To him, to the hospital, they are patients. So he could not confirm or deny whether the shooter was one of the people who was taken to Hopkins Bayview.
You know, it's interesting, and as I mentioned, and I was really hoping that somebody would ask, is Devin said that there were several guards out there with bulletproof vests.
Our reporter Devin Barlotta tweeted this, right?
Right. So my question is, you know, are they why? What do we know about that? Are they still walking around? My understanding is that there is not a threat to the hospital. A sheriff's deputy said that there is not an immediate threat to the general public, but it is unclear as to why that is the case and why people are wearing bulletproof vests, or if that's just part of Baltimore City Police's response, just because it is an ongoing scene. Let's go back out to Ritter live with more. Rick?
Well, Jess, Denise, again, that was a doctor from Johns Hopkins Bayview Medical Center who said they've received 4 patients, all by ground, all priority 1 adults, meaning they suffered gunshot wounds, taken into that medical center. Some have already undergone surgery, and right now they're still trying to notify families. So that kind of gives you an idea of how many people we're talking about that have been injured or impacted by this shooting. 4 just by ground. I mean, Mike Helgren all day has been live out there on the scene with the medevac going up and down, transporting patients in other ways. We know at least 4 were taken by ground to the Johns Hopkins Bayview Medical Center. Now, we heard from the Harford County Sheriff, the Harford County executive a little while ago, painting us a grim picture of what took place at this Rite Aid distribution center today, saying the call came in around 9 o'clock this morning. Deputies arrived within about 5 minutes, and that they know multiple people have been killed and multiple people have been injured in this shooting, but not elaborating on a specific amount. But again, multiple people killed, multiple people injured, and the lone suspect taken into custody, not saying whether that's a male or a female, but lone suspect in custody and in critical condition. Again, we heard from the Harford County Sheriff and County Executive Barry Glassman a little while ago. Here's what he had to say.
I followed this probably from the moment the call came in on our dispatch and listened to the radio transmissions. Unfortunately, in today's world, we have active shooter drilling and drills, and I can tell you and tell our Harford County citizens that every agency performed at the top of their profession, and the response from all our allied agencies was great. Our volunteer fire and EMS system responded with medical units. So I am thankful to all the agencies that came out to help us today to get through this, which is becoming a too often occurrence, not only in Harford County.
Unfortunately, as he said, this is becoming the new norm, and so many agencies across the country, of course, are doing training in this, making sure they're up to the finest standards in all of this, if you will. Here in Harford County, unfortunately, they have so much experience with this. We've been talking about it all day long. 3 mass shootings in 3 years, the last one before this one taking place literally 11 months ago, about 7 miles from here, at another workplace shooting. Of course, that suspect was taken into custody much later on. The suspect in this case, the lone suspect, in custody in critical condition. Just a heartbreaking scenario all around. Obviously, loved ones trying to find more information out right now, making sure their loved ones are okay. We saw a lot of posts on social media, people reaching out, dropping their loved ones' names, saying, do you know this person? Do you know if they're okay? I can't get in touch with them. And that's the heartbreaking situations that we're starting to hear about with these shootings that always unfold shortly after these details come out. But again, multiple people killed, multiple people wounded. The lone suspect now in custody, but in critical condition. And you have to believe at this time, now that they have that suspect in custody, they obviously know the suspect's identity, that the ATF, FBI agencies, they're going to be digging into that suspect's background, trying to get more information on why this unfolded, digging into computers, cell phone records, maybe speaking with people he or she knows, trying to find out exactly why this unfolded.
Well, Rick, interrupting you there just for a second, yes, you're absolutely right that there are lots of people out there who are distressed. And in case you have not heard, we're going to repeat this throughout the day. There is a phone number that the Harford County Sheriff's Office has set up, because we don't have answers for you. The doctor at Bayview cannot give identities, obviously, the patients, till the families have been notified. The number is 410-838-5800. Feel free to hand that out on social media to anyone you think needs to know it. 410-838-5800. That is a number that the Sheriff's Office has set up so that you can hopefully get some answers to the burning questions you have if you know someone or are related to someone who works at that facility.
Right. Also, we had been talking a little bit. I just got a tweet from a law enforcement official who said, you know, it is protocol that law enforcement wear a ballistic vest when responding to any call involving the possibility of personal harm. You know, thank you so much. We know this. My question is regarding the hospital specifically. He did say that it was, the doctor said that it is business as usual as far as they know. But anytime you have a situation like this, my question would be, it's unclear if the the suspect in this case was taken to Johns Hopkins. And if there is any threat to anyone in that trauma department, we know that security is increased. And that's why I was trying to see if there was some sort of connection there, and I think that will all come to light as this investigation progresses.
Right. The doctor very poignantly said to a doctor, to the facility, they're patients.
Right.
Doesn't matter whether they are a shooter or a victim, they're patients. So we will not know that until they are able to notify all the families involved. There's Mike Helgren. We've been saying Mike was first on the scene today at just after. What time did you get there, Mike? Like 9:20, 9:30?
Oh, yeah, in the 9 o'clock hour, and I'll tell you one new development. The Harford County Sheriff's Office is asking anyone who is still inside these buildings here to dial 911 so that they know where they are, because they have to go through these buildings. I'll read you the exact tweet. At this time, the Harford County Sheriff's Office would ask that anyone who may still be in the building to dial 911 so that deputies can locate you. Still, a lot of police here on the scene. They are early in this investigation. They've got to go through that building to give the all clear, even though we know that there is no threat, according to the sheriff here. You know, they have to go through every inch of that building, and that is something that we've seen them do in this very county after mass shootings. You know, we talked about bulletproof vests at the hospital. You heard the one question in the press conference was the suspected shooter taken to Johns Hopkins Bayview? The doctor speaking would not answer that question, you know, would not provide that information. We do know that the lone suspect was critically injured. Police didn't fire the bullet, they say, but that suspect was critically injured, and we taken to a hospital. And so we don't know exactly where that suspect is at this point, and we don't know, you know, whether police have been able to, at this point, interview the suspect. But we did speak to some civilian people out here at the scene about what they have seen. Let's take a listen to that right now.
It's been absolutely crazy. Everything's cut off. All the roads are cut off. They're not even supposed to let cars down here, and they're just using any larger vehicles they're letting through. But they're telling some people to divert through the graveyard somewhat, but there's so many cars that I think I counted at least 13 ambulances, and that was just when I was counting. And they put in a lot of emergency vehicles. There's like 3 choppers. They're still looking. It's still investigating.
So that was a little earlier today, and we got to tell you, there are still some roads blocked off here in front of this distribution center. You can see where we are here, there's still a large police presence out here at the scene. Again, the Harford County Sheriff's Office asking people to call 911 if they're still inside that building. And now we are seeing another empty Harford County school bus going back into the scene. Now, earlier we saw 3 school buses that were brought in here. They took people out. About a half hour later, we're seeing another school bus enter the entrance here to this Rite Aid warehouse industrial area. So we perhaps they're gathering more people to take them back out from the scene. But another school bus arriving here at the scene. So it appears that they're still trying to clear this building and make sure that there is no one inside. So they're still trying to make sure that any civilians who are in this building are out, and that is another aspect of controlling, making sure this scene is totally under control here. And as you heard from that witness on the scene, just a chaotic situation, and something that she says is such a quiet area, you don't expect it. But sadly, we've seen other shootings just down the road here, from Panera to the Advanced Granite shooting last year. But another school bus arriving here on the scene, trying to clear out this building, asking those who are in the building to call 911 so that they can locate them. That is the latest from here in front of this Rite Aid distribution center.
Mike, before you go, just very briefly, if you're still there, were you not surprised when the sheriff said that there was a single weapon, that was a handgun? When you have multiple fatalities, multiple injuries, and a handgun? You know more about this than I do.
I mean, we don't, you know. No, I mean, he didn't describe the weapon beyond that, or whether anything was used to enhance that weapon. We don't know. I mean, it was surprising, and right now we've got the ATF out here, so and there was a large ATF contingent, I can tell you. So those are the experts in providing their expertise in this situation. So they, I'm assuming that they have recovered that weapon, that single handgun, and you know, they are going to be looking at that, finding out where it came from, and you know, we don't know whether anything was used to enhance that weapon at this point, and that may come out later as the sheriff's office provides more information later today. So yes, it was surprising. We got to wait and see, but from what the sheriff said, a handgun, and he along with the ATF are looking more at that weapon, and more details are going to come out on that.
All right, thank you, Mike. Very interesting.
All right, we want to update you now to Harford County Sheriff is updating the family reunification hotline. That new number, if you need it, 410-638-3826. 410-638-3826. Option 9, and they're asking, you know, if you know anybody, please share this. I know on Facebook there's a lot of people asking for help reuniting with their family members. They haven't heard from them. 410-638-3826. We're going to go now to Devin Bartolotta, who is live at Johns Hopkins Bayview campus. And Devin, I keep asking this over and over. Talk to us about the security that is there at the hospital.
Jess, we just heard a bit ago from Dr. Raymond Fang. He's the head of the Trauma Medical Center here at Bayview. He told us over and over again, this is business as usual. There are a few cars at the end of the street here that are blocking things off, and we did see security guards that are wearing bulletproof vests. But he did say that once they received everyone, they have 4 patients here, everything kind of went back to normal. They're just treating them as patients. He said that, again, 4 people were brought here by ambulance. They were treated as a priority 1 because they all had gunshot wounds, but that's really all the information that he could share with us, because he said that those people's families have not yet been notified, and police are working right now to connect with their families and tell them where they are. So we right now do not know the ages, the genders, we don't know the nature of anyone's injuries of the 4 victims that are here. We do know that several of them needed surgery, but that's all that Dr. Fang would really tell us here. Otherwise, he said they were kind of braced for impact here whenever they heard that they were going to be getting victims from a mass shooting, and they were prepared to receive people. But once they received only 4 patients, they said that everything kind of went back to business as usual, and other patients or other families here may not even notice any difference at all whenever they come to the hospital here. Actually, if you look right to my left here, you can see 2 of those security guards that have the bulletproof vests. This is Johns Hopkins security here, and they're just walking with someone right into the building there. But that's really about all we've seen in terms of heightened security here or anything other than Dr. Fang said business as usual. So he said that we're going to get another update at 2:30 this afternoon. We are hoping then whether we might find out some more information about the 4 patients that are here and whether one of them may be the shooting suspect. Again, we do know that the shooting suspect is in critical condition, but we have not been told what hospital that person is at. Dr. Fang said here they're all patients, and he can't tell us that.
Thank you very much, Devin, reporting at Hopkins Bayview. Now let's go over to Nicole, who's in the cube, and she's been carefully monitoring social media. Nicole?
Yes, Denise, Jess, we're up to 18,000 tweets, and I say that because the Hartford Sheriff's Department wanted to remind people that everything you're taking in social media needs to be verified, needs to make sure that it is accurate information. So we're tracking social media in the cube right now. The latest tweet came out from Hartford Sheriff saying, at this time, the office wants anyone that may still be in the building to call 911 so deputies can locate you. Mike Helgren reminded you about that tweet as well. So if you're still in the area and you're in that building, the deputies need you to give them a call. Now, we're also taking a look at some of the other tweets. Based on what we know right now, we know that there was a lone suspect. The suspect is in custody and critical condition in the hospital at this time, as we just got an update on that as well. The sheriff's office also confirming multiple wounded, multiple fatalities, as we've heard in the last hour or so. The first report came in 9:06. Shots fired at the Rite Aid distribution center. Assets were on the scene within 5 minutes, and we know it was a multiple agency response there. So we know all hands were on deck. We want to remind you that there is a family reunification center set up in Harvard Grace. Here's the address: 3633 Level Village Road. Again, that's for families trying to find their loved ones and reunite. Again, anything you see on social media that you may be sharing or seeing, make sure that it is from a verified source. We've seen some people checking in, letting people know that they are safe. We're just monitoring new information as it comes. Again, if you're still in that building, still in the area, please call 911 so the deputies may be able to find you. Denise, Jess.
All right, thank you, Nicole. And anyone who may be just tuning in, we are continuing to cover this shooting in Harford County, not because it is still ongoing, but because there are still so many unanswered questions, and including how many victims have died and how many victims are injured and what their identities may be. But as we have been trying to tell those who have been following us, we have been told that the scene has been secured. As you can see, multiple law enforcement going through all of the buildings and searching.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rena Nine, and thank you for joining us. You've been listening to our coverage from our Baltimore station, WJZ, on that deadly shooting in Maryland. And here's the latest. Multiple people have been killed and wounded in PERRYMAN, which is about 30 miles northeast of Baltimore. The shooting happened at a Rite Aid distribution center. The investigation is still fluid, but we know that the FBI and the ATF are helping out. Here's Harford County Sheriff Jeffrey Gahler.
Based on what we know right now, and again, very preliminary, the lone suspect in this incident is in custody and is in critical condition at a local hospital. It appears to be a single weapon that was used, a handgun, and there were no shots fired by any of the law enforcement officers responding to the scene.
This is at least the third shooting at a workplace in the U.S. in just the last 2 days. We'll keep a close eye on this story, and we'll have much more as we learn it. Well, Republican senators warn that timing is running out for Judge Brett Kavanaugh's accuser, Professor Christine Blasey Ford, to agree to testify before the Senate Judiciary Committee. Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley told Ford's lawyers the burden is on them and that they have until 10 a.m. on Friday to say whether or not Ford will testify. The hearing would include just two witnesses, Ford and Kavanaugh. Ford's lawyer called the process, quote, not a fair or good faith investigation, in part because the GOP has rejected the idea of a wider nonpartisan probe. Ford wants the FBI